projector. So I'm going to do it this morning, show you the muscles and how the muscles work, or maybe not. There we go. I don't seem to have any noise. Wait a minute. I think I turned it down. Yes, I did. There we go. All right.
The skeletal muscle of animals, including humans, are striated. They exist in bundles of thousands of muscle fibers. A single muscle fiber is actually a muscle cell. As you can see, muscle cells are very elongated and contain several nuclei. Packed inside the muscle cells are contractile myofibrils. Myofibrils show the striated pattern as repeating subunits called sarcomeres. When a motor neuron stimulates a muscle fiber, overlapping filaments in the sarcomeres slide along one another, and the sarcomeres shorten. The repeated pattern of the sarcomere results from the arrangement of the two major proteins within the myofibrils: myosin and actin. The myosin heads are the actual mechanism for muscle contraction. Now let's examine the process in detail. First of all, when a motor neuron stimulates a muscle fiber, calcium ions are released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. The ions force the tropomyosin to displace and expose myosin binding sites of actin. An ATP molecule is unhydrolyzed and the myosin head forms a cross bridge. When the ADP is replaced by a new molecule of ATP, the myosin head detaches from actin and goes back to its original state. And that's pretty much the whole process. And one more thing. Each myosin head attaches to and releases from actin independently, not in unison. Otherwise, the myosin heads would all release at once, and the whole muscle would go to a relaxed state. And that wouldn't be good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyway, so that's how muscles work. Let's see what else we have here.
Have some cookies.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Food for breakfast.
Halloween.
Oh, I mean Halloween. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Halloween. I keep forgetting it's a holiday. Keep thinking Thanksgiving. But if it were Thanksgiving, wait a minute.
Is it a Joker?
If it were Thanksgiving, I would be in Florida. There it is. Okay. Muscle building.
Muscle building. The key to building muscle is protein synthesis and cellular repair. Skeletal muscle is made up of long fibrous chains containing proteins. Bundles of thousands of fibers make up the muscle itself. When an athlete engages in a heavy workout, this structure is damaged, causing micro tears in the muscle fibers. The body naturally repairs this damage by mending the torn fibers. The result is a muscle that's larger and stronger than before. And with each additional workout, the athlete adds bulk, strength, and speed.
There you go. I'd like to find out how to get bigger triceps. but my triceps are big enough the way they are. All right, one last video, I think. Oh, yeah.
The Hulk is an anthropomorphic exoskeleton which mimics the human form. It provides extra support that enables a person to carry more weight than they normally could. Exoskeleton technologies are considered part of the robotics field. If you want to think about them as wearable robots, that's pretty accurate. They sense what the user wants to do, where the user wants to go, and mimics the motion. We like to call these autonomous systems. The exoskeleton is primarily composed of titanium components, which are both lightweight and provide the strength needed to carry the load. A microprocessor takes in readings from the sensors that are throughout the structure and calculates where the user wants to move, and then commands the actual hydraulic system to actuate the joints to provide the motion. You can walk, you can run, you can bend, you can crawl, you can leap. It does not impede your range of motion whatsoever. This technology could be a real benefit to the military. Just imagine you're a soldier operating at 6,000 feet in the Afghan mountains and being asked to take 120 pounds up in that level of thin air. How exhausted you would be once you got there. An exoskeleton provides the ability to carry that weight the same distance, but to have energy left to execute the mission once you're there. We've also looked at attachments that allow users to carry weight not only on their back, but also on the front. The exoskeleton will fit anybody between 5'4" and 6'2". The current system weighs 53 pounds, but it's pretty much unnoticeable to the user because what the technology does is it even transfers its own weight to the ground, in addition to the weight you're carrying. And we're taking the load off the soldier's back. And we're going to help prevent injuries that occur from carrying heavy loads and repetitive lifting tasks. The best part about working on this technology is that it gives us a glimpse into the art of the possible.
Hold. Okay, 6,000 feet. They're talking about 6,000 feet up in the Afghan mountains. How high are we here?
30.
7,500 feet, so we're higher than the Afghan mountains.
Oh, wow.
As scary as that is. Wait a minute. Okay. Let me get rid of this. Okay, then we'll start where we were before. Ha! Except I don't remember where we were before. Oh, I think we talked about girls, but we didn't talk about boys. Did we?
Not the boy, not the male, but
Okay. Male delivery of the gamete. Of course, we're talking about humans here. Male delivery of the gamete requires penetration. The male system is more complex, of course, than the female system. I'm not sure this is where we are. Yeah, that's close enough.
yeah.
The erection takes place due to an engorgement of blood, and this is something we talked about before. Semen is produced in the testes and it's stored in the epididymis. During ejaculation, and you can see these are not very large structures, so we're not really talking about a huge volume of semen. During ejaculation, the sperm travels up the vas deferens past the seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and Cowper's glands, where it picks up a viscous alkaline fluid called semen. And I already explained to you that I've had patients who had a problem reproducing, and in select cases, the problem was that one of these glands was blocked, and they couldn't ejaculate at an alkaline enough fluid to impregnate anybody. As tragic as that is. Normally the male is not erect. Thank goodness. because cells in the glands of the penis, the paragigantocellular nucleus, sends serotonergic fibers down the spinal cord to inhibit erection. Okay, that's why men aren't wandering around with constant erections. Some men actually are. It's a condition known as priapus. And these individuals have perpetual erections, which can do damage to the penis, unfortunately. It can do damage to the blood vessels that allow the individual to have an erection. And for that reason, that's one of the reasons why they warn you if you've had an erection for longer than 4 hours and you need to go see a doctor on all those commercials, all those advertisements. And they're right. You could do a lot of damage to the blood vessels in your penis. So you need to be careful. Having an erection for 4 hours is kind of illogical. But anyway, so the paragigantocellular nucleus sends serotonergic fibers down the spinal cord to inhibit erection. The reason that Viagra, Levitra, and Cialis work is because they block that. They block this aspect of it. Now, it doesn't stay in your system forever. It's not like you can take a Viagra and have an erection for 4 or 5 hours. It doesn't work that way. It gets into your system, it blocks this portion, and then you can have an erection. Now, the reality is that you can't it doesn't just cause an erection. It's not like you've become a dog and you've got an os penis all of a sudden. It doesn't work that way. The individual has to be sexually excited before it works. During sexual excitation, the forebrain inhibits the PGN and allows the penis to become erect. So there's as much going on in the brain as there is in the pelvic region. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors increase serotonin in the brain and may not allow the inhibition of the PGN. And this is kind of a problem. This can be a problem for individuals suffering from depression who take SSRIs. If they're a male, of course, they take SSRIs. The serotonin will inhibit the erection potentially. So males taking SSRIs sometimes cannot produce an erection. While there is no normal or typical when it comes to sexual response to Christmas, why don't they leave me alone? Too many social and psychological factors. Women achieve vaginal lubrication during the excitement phase. Males have a smaller amount of lubricating exudate during erection to ease penetration. And this is how the male and the female knows that they are excited. They're both lubricating for intercourse. Jiminy Christmas. Males typically have one basic pattern of response, but they do pass through refractory phase after orgasm when erection is difficult. And this is pretty much the way it works for males. It works that way just about every time. No big mystery, no changes. For females, however, they don't actually have a refractory phase like males do. They can have multiple orgasms, but there are 3 typical patterns. Either it's they plateau and then will have their orgasm. They will build up to the orgasm, or it's the 3rd one. Oh, they don't actually. B is no orgasm at all. It's just a buildup of excitement to the point of being able to have intercourse, of course, and then they have several. They get close to orgasm, but they don't actually achieve orgasm.
So, A line, that one's a multiple orgasm?
There is no multiple orgasm.
And then the B is the
Yeah,
plateau?
B is actually C is the quick orgasm.
Okay.
C is the quick orgasm. And sometimes it plateaus and then they'll have their orgasm. Sometimes it's very rapid and they will orgasm almost immediately. And at other times they don't orgasm at all. Once upon a time, and of course you're both too young to remember any of this stuff, In the 1950s and 1960s, you're way too young to remember any of this stuff. In the 1950s and 1960s, people started publishing literature dealing with female orgasm, and they claimed that women didn't have orgasms. And of course, Masters and Johnson did their studies, and they realized women do have orgasms, but they're much easier to achieve during masturbation than it is during intercourse. So then they started writing books trying to liberate women, and one of the things that they talked about was the female orgasm and the fact that women deserved an orgasm just like men did. Intercourse up to that point was pretty much males having an orgasm and the females being participants but not having orgasms. So it's a really kind of an odd topic, and it's an odd subject, but in the 1950s they didn't think women could have orgasms, as odd as that may seem. Of course, Kinsey did his work at Indiana University. Masters and Johnson did their work in St. Louis. And after that, of course, people started reading these books and realizing that people were they were making up things. They were making up fantasies that women shouldn't have an orgasm. And actually, the church came out and they were trying to decide whether women should have or should be able to have an orgasm or not. Was this sinful? You know, that kind of thing. It got really weird. It got too weird, actually. In many situations in nature, the males and females of the species are very much different in size as well as structure. Human males are usually larger than human females. It's not absolute, of course, but I think the average height for women now is 5'5". I'm 5'6", so I'm real close to not being tall enough. But average height for males is 5'9", 5'10", the 5'9", 5'10" range. In most vertebrates, the male is larger because he must battle other males for the right to reproduce, and it's kind of that way with humans as well. There is some degree of conflict that has to take place in order for the two individuals to get together. Sometimes, depending on the circumstance. Another definition of sexual dimorphism is that the male gamete is abundant, small, and cheap, while the female gamete is large, rare, and expensive. And this is a point of fact. So males will produce millions, hundreds of millions of sperm with each ejaculate, and females, of course, will produce 1 ova a month. So as far as the males are concerned, their gamete is abundant, small, and cheap, and the females are large, rare, and very expensive. And that's one of the reasons why throughout history females have been more protected than males have. Males are kind of a expendable gender of the two. If we were going to argue about it, males are far more expendable than females are, which is one of the reasons why when we saw the pictures of the soldiers, they were all male. Historically, of course, the males have fought and the females have been protected because they represent children, and the males don't represent anything at all. They kind of represent children, but not really. Okay. Okay, I saw the wedding planner a couple nights ago. J-Lo's been around for a while. He's been around for about 20 years, I guess. Because of the low cost of producing sperm, males can easily gather enough nutrients and energy to impregnate millions of women. If a man wanted to, potentially he could impregnate a woman every day. Maybe he could impregnate more than one, potentially, if he could find enough willing women. And of course, throughout history, there have been individuals that have maintained harems, and these individuals have potentially produced hundreds of offspring. King Frederick of Prussia had very many women that he had access to, and he produced over 500 children. And this is a German king. So we're not just talking about desert princes. We're talking about German kings as well. Whether males are selective or not, the odds are that they will have some offspring that survive. So if you produce a lot of offspring, even though you don't try to take care of them, potentially some of them will survive. Females, on the other hand, have to be more selective. Females have to be more selective. She gets one shot at it. I had a friend that impregnated his wife, his girlfriend, and his ex-wife all at the same, not at the same time, within a week of one another. And they gave birth within a week of one another. So he had 3 children that have almost the same birthday. And now you ask yourself, well, what woman would have anything to do with that guy? Well, there were 3 of them that did.
And they knew about each other?
No.
No.
Oh, hell no. Eddie's got 6 kids, and 3 of them are exactly the same age. Oh, what a jerk. Anyway, so women have to be more selective. They have to be they get to have a baby every 9 months. He can have a baby every day. Potentially he can make a baby every day if he could find a willing participant. Females that carefully nurture their costly eggs are more likely to have offspring that survive to the next generation. Thus, females must mate carefully. Females mate carefully and males don't. Males that carry many beneficial genes are more likely to provide the female's offspring with favorable genes, so she's always looking for the best choice. But how does a woman do this? And of course, J-Lo used to date Ben Affleck. She never married him, and I don't think she made any babies with him. But for a while there, she was dating Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck has recently discussed the fact that he's an alcoholic. And he has been for a while. And it embarrasses him. He's not any stronger than that or something. Okay. So how does a woman select a mate? In the case of J-Lo,
The top picture, like, you're trying to get into a picture.
that's a real picture. She really married that guy. This is the guy she's married. Is she still married? Anyway, this is. Yeah, okay. That's the guy she actually made babies with. They had twins. But she was also married to P. Diddy. Is that who that is? P. Diddy? I don't know. The other guy's a dancer. The female must closely observe the appearance and behavior of the male. A vigorous, healthy male is more likely to carry good genes than an unhealthy one. Thus, courtship is a period when the female assesses the genetic makeup of a male to judge this suitability as a mate. And this is one of the reasons why people don't just come together and get married. It just doesn't work that way. Usually they observe each other over a period of time. She was dating P. Diddy first, and then I think she married P. Diddy. Didn't she marry him? Or maybe she didn't.
I don't think so.
She didn't marry him? Okay. And then she married this guy, and then she divorced him, and then she dated Ben Affleck, and she broke up with him, and then she got together with Ricky, whatever his name is. Puerto Rican. She's Puerto Rican, so that made a lot of sense. So as you can see, she was selecting males that were fairly vigorous and had relatively good genes. I'm not sure about Ben Affleck's genes, but some women find him attractive. I think he's the Daredevil. Isn't he Daredevil? And he's also Batman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who doesn't want to marry Batman? So let's think about it. There are 4 mating strategies that are used in the animal kingdom to ensure offspring survival. The first one is promiscuity. And it works. Females will mate with more than one male or as many as they can in any mating season. And this is what female dogs will do. And this is one of the reasons why the word for a female dog is so derogatory as if you apply it to a human. because a female dog, if you've ever watched a female dog in heat, she's not even looking. She's just getting in the right position, and the males are mounting her. This will ensure that the male with the most attributes going for him is most likely to be the sire. I got a hole in my pocket. That's not good. All my change is coming out.
Hopefully you didn't have any cash in there.
I do.
Oh,
I have all kinds of cash in there.
oh no.
Oh, there it goes. I got some more coins falling down my leg. Yeah, I got all kinds of money in my pocket, but it's got a big hole in it. Wait a minute, let me trade my keys for my change. There we are. What a horrible thing to happen to anybody, to lose all your change out of your pocket. And let me pick up my quarters. There we go. This is a real tuxedo, by the way.
It's
Nice.
It's nice.
Thanks.
See that?
I think I'll dress it a
I like the
tuxedo
bow tie.
every day. I've only got the one bow tie, but I've got several cummerbunds. Okay. It's I bought it when I was much smaller, but now I can't bend my
Is it
My
standing
shoulders.
like this?
yeah, just stand there all stiff. Polygamy, also known as polygamy, is where the male maintains a harem of females that he will exclusively mate with, and that's polygamy. Most ungulates mate in this fashion, as do gorillas and elephant seals. So you'll see a silverback gorilla with several female mates. Seals do the same thing. Elk will try to maintain a harem of females. This is also practiced among humans in many parts of the world, and it's relatively popular in the Middle East. Individuals will have more than one wife, and actually a lot of native tribes before Christianity dictated you can only have one spouse. Yeah, they maintain a lot more than one wife. Up on the plains, and I think I talked about this yesterday, but up on the northern plains, the buffalo hunters, the people that hunted buffalo would maintain more than one wife so that they could process the buffalo much more efficiently. Polyandry is rarer than polygamy, but it is still known to occur. In polyandry, one woman mates with more than one man, but these men can only mate with a single female. This is practiced in Tibet. Usually when she marries somebody, she marries brothers. So we're not talking about... And also, a lot of times in polygamy, he'll marry sisters, because sisters are theoretically get along better than two strangers. We'll pretend they do anyway.
I've heard about that. You know, like the chiefs from the medicine man has married 3 of his sisters. Yeah. So he has, I think he has 4 kids and a son. And then the last one, 3 kids, and I think 6 kids. All from the same.
Are we talking about here on this reservation, or is this, okay?
Yeah. And then he's a medicine.
Okay. Okay.
Married 3 sisters.
Married 3 sisters.
Not married. They didn't marry. That was the thing, yeah. They didn't marry.
Well, you can't marry more than
Yeah.
one person. Not unless you're, well, you can't marry more than one person. Even if you're Mormon, you can't do it. But of course, you can do it under the table. Monogamy, of course, is the most prevalent mating method among humans. In monogamy, a pair will form a mating pair where exclusive access is maintained between both the male and the female. Now, we're talking about exclusive access. The reality is that she represents babies and he doesn't represent anything at all. So she can mate, she, in a monogamous situation, theoretically, she should only be mating with him, but the reality is, of course, that's not what happens. I was just reading an article about women who cheat And they, according to this article, women are just as likely to cheat as men are. But they cheat for a different reason. Men cheat because they think they're supposed to, and women cheat because they're looking for excitement. So that was kind of interesting. I found that kind of curious. This seems to be the best manner in which a woman can gain resources from the male when he must provide for his children to ensure that they survive. So theoretically, of course, that's what's happening. Sexual selection takes place when the female selects the male that they wish to mate with. Sexual selection among birds is the most garish of all creatures. In order to attract a female, a male will weigh themselves down with impossible structures, such as the peacock's tail. And of course, if you've ever been around a peacock, they have a really hard time escaping because the tail is so heavy. And they can barely fly. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, the tail is just so massive and heavy. Some species participate in intricate mating rituals during courting that are not only garish, but call attention to themselves from predators. Almost all male birds have intricate songs that they sing in the spring during mating to attract a female. In some species, courting is extensive. Among large cats, only vigorous exercise over several days will bring the female to ovulation. This is the way it works with cheetahs. The reason we don't have as many cheetahs in the world as other large cats is because in order for a cheetah to become viable, the female has to be chased for 2 or 3 days, and for this solid, she can't stop. If she stops, then she won't ovulate. So what happens is a pair of male cheetahs will take turns chasing the female to get her to ovulate. Usually it's a brother pair will chase a female. So the question is, who gets to breed with her? And the answer is, I guess, who's ever there whenever she stops is the one that gets to breed. The Wadabi males of Niger these are Wadabi males from Niger trying to charm females with their eye movements and makeup. As you can see, they're quite attractive. And I do have a video showing the Wadabi. These are fascinating people. They consider themselves the most beautiful people on earth. And who can argue with them?
The Wadabi are part of the Fulani nation. They live as nomads along the southern edge of the Sahara. Despised by all neighboring peoples, they are called Bororos, something like herdsmen in tatters. They call themselves Wadabi, those under the taboo of purity. They consider themselves the most beautiful people on this earth. The earth does not belong to anybody, they say. It would only belong to mankind if they were herdsmen of the sun.
These are the men. They're not singing. I think we get to see the women at the end.
Oh, I was gonna say, what about the women?
Now wait till you see the ladies. That's why I wore yellow today. There's the women.
Oh, they have no makeup.
They don't have any makeup on at all.
They look down.
They're Muslim. They're not allowed to. They're not supposed to look even yet. Hubba hubba. Ooh. She doesn't think much of the photography, that's for sure. No doubt.
Interesting.
Yep.
And they don't do that these days, right? Some,
I'm sorry?
do they still keep themselves?
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, of course.
Oh,
My goodness. The other thing is their eyes. I don't know if you noticed how they were moving their eyes around. Yeah, they can move their eyes independently. As you can see, this guy, he's got one eye that's looking toward the, and one eye looking down, one eye's looking to the right. Or the left, I guess, in this case. Let me show you another group. This is the Maasai. The Wadabi live way up north, in northern Sahara Desert. The Maasai live in south of that, and they live over in eastern Africa, if I can get this thing to work. Come on, there we go. Okay. These are herdsmen. They're both herdsmen. The Wadabi and the Maasai. Of course, these guys have more grass to work with, I guess. Women select their mate by how high they can jump. Again, kind of hard to keep it on, but it makes him look taller. There's the women right there. Hubba hubba. How do we select our mates? By how well they can shoot a basketball. No? Oh, just a thought. Okay. These are the women of the Wadabi, and these are the women of the Maasai tribe. As you can see, they have very colorful outfits on, but the women don't really put on very much makeup. Not the Wadabi anyway, not compared to the guys. My goodness, the guys are all painted up. Sexual differentiation takes place among most humans while still in the womb. The sperm either carries a male or a female chromosome. All ova are female, and that therefore all women want to produce female children. Well, anyway, they're all X's. Thus, males are heterogametic sex because of the two different chromosomes, either X or Y. While females are homogametic, they only produce X chromosomes. Very early in development, the gonads are not differentiated, and of course at this point you can't tell if it's a male or a female. They have indifferent gonads. In mammals, the Y chromosome contains a SRY gene that is responsible for the development of the testes. If the individual has a Y chromosome, the cells of the different gonads begin making SRY protein. The SRY protein causes the core of the cells to proliferate over the outer layer of the cells, and the gonad becomes a testis. So the SRY protein is what makes the male a male, and it creates a testes. And that's, of course, what a male looks like, just in case you didn't know what a male was supposed to look like. Just kidding, most males don't look like that. And that's what a female looks like. Just kidding, most females don't look like that. But then again, most males don't look like that. Anyway, okay. You can see that his abdominal muscles it's really kind of interesting. They're offset. So instead of having a six-pack, he's got a situation where his right side is above his left side, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, that's what a woman looks like. If the individual has no Y chromosome, no SRY protein is produced, and the indifferent gonads form with the outer layer dominant and the inner core is inhibited. As the fetus begins to form, they develop two ducts that connect the indifferent gonads to the cell wall. There are two of them. One of them is the Wolffian duct and the other is the Mullerian duct. If bathed in testosterone from the testes, the Wolffian duct will develop. If not, the Mullerian duct will develop. So we have an opportunity here to have either a boy or a girl. Wolffian ducts and Mullerian ducts. Now, in a very, very rare circumstance, you will produce an individual with both Mullerian and Wolffian ducts. In other words, they have both male and female reproductive organs. I keep telling this story. When I was in the service, we had a guy that came in. He'd been wounded. He was a pilot. He was a Navy pilot, actually. But we were at an Air Force base. He was a Navy pilot, and he had been wounded in the abdomen, and he'd been wounded in the leg from shrapnel. His plane was shot down, and they rescued him. Anyway, they brought him to. He was from Ohio. And I was working at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and so we brought him in, and they did surgery. They did his first abdominal surgery, and when they cut into him, they realized, whoa, he's got a uterus. He's got a uterus, and he's got ovaries. Now the funny thing about this guy was named called Bear. That was his nickname. Was Bear. He had more hair than anybody I've ever seen, and it was long hair. I mean, it was really weird. But he wasn't Italian. Italians sometimes will have a lot of hair, but he wasn't Italian. But he had lots and lots and lots of hair, and they called him Bear. He would not leave the nurses alone. It got so bad, he'd grab them, and of course they'd order him not to do it. But he was a pilot. He could do just about anything he wanted. Especially in an Air Force hospital. So they finally had to assign him male nurses so he'd leave them alone. I mean, it was that bad. He would not stop. It was just the weirdest thing in the world. So when they cut into him, they discovered he had female parts on the inside. He also had a penis and the testicles. And he had distended testicles. He had relatively large testicles. It was really kind of bizarre. His penis wasn't anything extraordinary, but he had these huge testicles. It was really kind of a weird situation. He was just crazed. He was like a crazed lunatic. He had picked up a venereal disease in his leg wound because some woman was doing a crotch dance on his leg. I mean, it was just so bizarre. He picked up trichomonas in a leg wound. Well, that never happens. We never see that. That is just insane. So this guy, and they shipped him to the Philippines to stabilize him before they shipped him back to the States. So here we've got this guy who's oversexed, obviously, he won't leave the nurses alone, picked up a venereal disease in his leg, and now we've discovered that he has both male and female reproductive organs. And of course they got the whole team together, and everything that the team said, it leaked out to all the other medical people. And that's one of the reasons that I found out about it. The reason I found out about it was because there was this one nurse that he scared her, and she needed to talk to somebody. And she didn't want to talk to anybody that could get the guy in trouble, so she talked to a lab tech. Lab techs and nurses don't really have anything to do with each other, and I'm a little bitty short guy, so she talked to me, and she told me the whole story. Well, they had to decide what they were going to do. They had to decide whether they were going to tell him or whether they weren't going to tell him. Well, they were afraid if they told him that it would change his personality and he would have problems. So they decided not to tell him. Then they had to decide whether to take out his uterus and ovaries or not, because it would change. Potentially, it would change things. They determined what was happening was that the reason he was so oversexed and the reason his testicles were so large was because he had to produce an excess amount of testosterone just to look like a male, because his ovaries were pumping out all of this estrogen and progesterone. So his testes were working overtime trying to keep him to be a male, and of course that made him this hypersexual creep. So they decided what they were going to do. They were going to take out his ovaries, and they took out his ovaries and his uterus, and they decided not to tell him that they did it, and to see if everything went back to normal. And of course, I have no idea what eventually happened to him, because he went back home, and they got him out of the service. It was kind of an interesting situation. But they kept threatening to kick him out of service if it's going through the hole in my pocket. They threatened to kick him out of the service if he didn't leave the nurses alone. And of course he wouldn't, or he couldn't, I don't know, one of the two. Anyway, eventually they took out his uterus and ovaries and didn't tell him about it. So that was the bottom line to this whole situation.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
Well, they were afraid it would change his psyche. They were afraid it would damage him. Okay, so we've got a Mullerian duct and we've got a Wolffian duct. If the individual turns out to be a male, then the Wolffian duct will develop, and if not, the Mullerian duct will develop. As the fetus begins to form, they develop two ducts. We already talked about that. Okay. If the SRY protein is released by the Y chromosome, the gonads become testes and bathe the area in testosterone. Once the testes are produced, now all of a sudden we've got this massive amount of testosterone that's splashing through this individual's system. The Wolffian duct develops into the vas deferens, the epididymis, and the seminal vesicle. The Mullerian duct disappears. So the Mullerian duct will disappear unless we have that really strange genetic situation where the female where it is a hermaphrodite, what they used to refer to as a hermaphrodite. The genital tubercle becomes a penis, and the genital fold becomes a scrotum. So all of these are the reproductive organs of the male. If both the chromosomes are X's, the gonads become ovaries, the Mullerian duct develops into the fallopian tubes, uterus, and the inner vagina, and the Wolffian duct disappears. The genital tubercle becomes a clitoris, and the genital fold becomes the labia majora and the labia minora. There you go. So it either becomes a male or a female. Or in the case of Bear, he had testes, so he was bathed in. And you would have thought that because he had testes, that the testes would produce so much testosterone that his female reproductive organs would just go away. but his female reproductive organs were working overtime as well. And since that was the case, of course, we had an individual that was both male and female. And he was hypermale, and the reason he was hypermale was because his testes were producing so much testosterone to balance him out against the amount of estrogen and progesterone being produced by his ovaries. Now the odd thing was when they talked to this guy, and they did a massive workup on him. And of course, he had no idea what was going on, but they did this massive workup on him. And one of the things that happened was when he got depressed, everything changed, because when he got depressed, his testes would produce less testosterone, and his ovaries would produce more estrogen and progesterone, as bizarre as that seems. Testosterone from the testes releases a hormone called anti-Mullerian hormone that shrinks the Mullerian duct, and of course that's what needs to happen. It causes tissue around the urethra to form the prostate gland. It causes epithelial tissue around the urethra to form a scrotum and a penis. The epithelial cells have 5-alpha reductase, which converts testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which allows masculinization. This is really important. This is extremely important. So the epithelial cells in the reproductive area produce 5-alpha reductase, and this converts the testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, which allows masculinization. Okay, now there's a reason why this is important. There's a reason, and the reason is because there is a group in the Dominican Republic that have a genetic flaw that doesn't allow 5-alpha reductase to be produced. In which case, the little boy doesn't become a male. If the sperm or the ova do not have a sex chromosome, the individual will have only one X chromosome. This individual has Turner syndrome and will be a female. They will have short stature and not develop secondary sexual characteristics. And that's Hunter. I can't remember her first name.
Yeah, she's an actress from several movies that I recognize.
Yeah.
The one at the top I recognize Kindergarten Cop.
Oh yeah, she was in Kindergarten Cop. She was also in Year of Living Dangerously with Mel Gibson and Sigourney Weaver. She played a male in that movie. She's in NCIS Los Angeles. I think she's still in that show. Anyway, she has Turner syndrome. She only has one X chromosome. So her female characteristics aren't very strong. These are individuals with Turner syndrome. This is the sister, and this is the sister with Turner syndrome. Another pair of individuals. This is the one with X chromosome. This is the one with only one X chromosome. As you can see, her secondary sexual characteristics aren't very strong. If the female fetus is exposed to androgens in the uterus, she might develop congenital adrenal hyperplasia. The overactive adrenal glands will produce more androgen and cause the genitalia that appears as either an undersized penis or an oversized clitoris. When I was in the service, our next door neighbor had a baby, and the female baby had this problem. She also didn't have any labia. She didn't have a labia majora or labia minora. It was the oddest thing. So I was a medic, but I was a brand new medic. I mean, I was new. Mm-hmm. And they called me over to their house one night. And they wanted me to look at their daughter's vagina. I'm going, wow, this isn't supposed to happen. Anyway.
So what happened? So what happened with your neighbor's baby?
What happened with her?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
The
The military. It's the military. You move a lot.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question about that part. How everything's all combined with it. We have a family member where he's a bedwetter,
Okay.
So they were asking him how come it's like his that condition still like that, and he's like he go into from toddler to adults to adult, he's still same condition. And they're asking if it was probably maybe his testes are probably closer to his body, where maybe that's what kind of like
Okay.
probably where he wets the bed. They're making all these hypotheses and theories about it, but it wasn't really. I think I mentioned it before
Okay.
about bedwetting.
Yeah. Actually, I don't
And
remember.
they're saying it's probably the testes were in the wrong position where.
Or they're not distended? I mean, they're still up in the abdomen?
Yeah, like kind of like close.
Okay.
So they were saying that that's probably what his condition is probably closer because his testes were too close to his abdomen, and which makes him wets the bed.
Okay. All
They
right.
haven't solved that, or I know he's a lonely person and his life is like.
Well, I can imagine. Okay, so we got the male reproductive area. The testes have to be below the body, and the reason the reason the testes are so low is because the testes, in order to produce sperm, it has to be not the same temperature as the body temperature. So if you're 98.6, if you've got a high temperature, like you're normally running the 99s or low 100s. Then potentially you can't produce any sperm because it's just too hot, and the testes won't produce sperm. For an individual whose body temperature runs low, like 96, 97, then they'll produce sperm no matter where their testes are. But the testes, the reason they're in a sac and the reason they're distended from the abdomen is so that they will produce sperm. They have to be a little bit cooler than body temperature. So they're saying that he's a bedwetter because his testes are too close to his abdomen.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was one of the response they got from specialists, and even I think even their own. So they believe that. But,
So what do they suggest that should?
he's just living his life as he wants to now. But amazingly, he has one daughter. But might not even be his daughter. So now they explain that part of it.
We won't even think about it.
Yeah. Because if sperm doesn't produce over 99, so it's probably not even.
Yeah, probably not even his. Since the androgen receptor is on the X chromosome, if an XY individual has a defective androgen receptor, they will not be sensitive to androgenic hormones. These individuals are referred to as androgen insensitive. These individuals will develop external female genitalia and develop all secondary female sexual characteristics except for menarche and have a shallow vagina. So they really have a difficult time having sex because their vagina is very shallow. They'll never have a period, so they're not really female. They're just males. They're males who are insensitive to androgen, to testosterone. And this is what they look like. As you can see, they have female body parts, pretty much. They did develop female secondary sexual characteristics. This individual was an Olympic runner from Kenya, I think. Anyway, they tried to determine, she was just kicking everybody's tail. She was really beating everybody. And they thought, she looks like a boy. Her secondary sexual characteristics aren't very high. Obviously she didn't have a penis. She had a vagina, and she had pubic hair, of course, but she didn't, when they tested her, she was XY, which is kind of confusing. So she's XY, but she's androgen insensitive. And that's the way it is with the other three women as well. Or are they women at all? I mean, it's really hard to make that determination. Guavadoces means eggs at 12. There's a group of males in the Dominican Republic whose 5-alpha reductase converts testosterone to dehydrotestosterone, which allows a penis in the scrotum to form. It's mutated. Despite the fact that the individual has XY chromosomal structure, the lack of 5-alpha reductase does not form a penis, of course. The area that looks like a vagina has no vaginal opening. This is what they look like at age. This is what one of these individuals looks like at age 4. As you can see, you would never get them mixed up with a boy. Because they do have testes with puberty, their bodies are bathed in testosterone, and their penis develops, their hips narrow, and their build turns obviously masculine. These individuals who were raised and acted like females suddenly begin looking and acting like males. Most of them actually do become males. As confusing as all that is. This is the guy at 42 years old. Same guy, well, not the same guy, but that's what they look like at age 4. That's what they look like at age 42. And of course, here we have different individuals. Looks like a girl, looks like a girl, looks like a girl, all of a sudden, and this guy would, for some reason, wouldn't show his penis, but this is what it looked like. Not the longest penis in the world, of course, but he is a male. Here's one that developed as both a male and a female. As you can see, she thinks she feels that she is a female. Unfortunately, she is also equipped with a penis and testicles. This is an individual who has the same problem. This one obviously is taking female estrogen injections so that she is developing female body parts. But as you can see, she looks awfully masculine. The individual this is the individual with the problem, not this individual. This is a female. This is one of those Guavadoces individuals, and there he is as an adult, as confusing as all that is. And that's the end of that chapter. I can't see this morning. What's wrong with me? Oh, I got this stuff in my face. Okay, 10:06. Are we ahead or are we behind? I don't know. Let's pretend we're ahead.
We're ahead.
We're ahead, okay. We're ahead then.
Because we're supposed to be in 12.
Chapter 13, but there's like 18 or 19 chapters. And sometimes I cover them all and sometimes I don't. Homeostasis, chapter 13. Let's stay healthy, okay? So how do we do that? Well, we need homeostasis. We need to maintain a harmony. We need to maintain a balance of our body chemicals, homeostasis. An individual cannot live unless they can stay warm, they can find water, and they can find food. It's the only way we can stay alive. The body maintains an elaborate monitoring system to ensure that the individual is aware of their thirst, their warmth, and their hunger. It is so important to the body that the body maintains several means of monitoring for each system. This is known as redundancy. So even if one system, you're not paying attention to one system, another system will give you the information that you need. And this is known as a redundancy. This is so that we don't all of a sudden die. Around my property or around my hogan, this puppy has been wandering around. Well, in the beginning I used to feed it, and it was doing fine. And I was thinking, well, maybe I could talk my wife into another dog. Of course I couldn't, but that's not the point. All of a sudden, the other dogs started coming around, the dominant dogs in the neighborhood. And this dog stopped eating completely. Couldn't get it to eat anything. And that's been for about 2 weeks. And now I think the dog is dead, but I'm not sure. I think it starved to death. But it didn't starve to death because there wasn't any food available to it. It starved to death because it didn't eat. I could put food in that dog's mouth and it wouldn't eat it. I don't know why. Maybe somebody poisoned it, maybe it's sick,
Sick.
or maybe it, because of the dominant males, the other dominant dogs around it, that it won't eat. Because that's not the way it works. In a pack of dogs, the dominant dog eats first, and then the other dogs eat later. That may be what's going on with this dog. I don't know. We don't have that system. If I'm hungry and there's food around, I'm going to eat it. Not because I'm a dominant male, but because I'm hungry. But we're humans. We're not pack animals like dogs are. The nervous system coordinates these regulatory systems to maintain homeostasis, of course. The brain closely monitors temperature, water supply, and nutrient supply by using a variety of neural and hormonal mechanisms to keep them within the critical range. If we have excess of any of the three, our bodies have ways of shedding the excess to maintain our level of homeostasis. So let's pretend that you're eating, that you take vitamin C to stay healthy in the wintertime, because you think the more vitamin C you eat, the less likely you will get a cold. So your body can only maintain or utilize a select amount of vitamin C. So what happens to all the excess vitamin C? You're taking mega doses of vitamin C. So what happens to the rest of it?
Stores. Maybe.
Well, we can either store it or we can get rid of it. And in this case, vitamin C, we get rid of it. In this case, you urinate it out. One of the first episodes of Big Bang Theory, Penny took Sheldon to the store, and she was looking at the vitamins, and she was trying to figure out which vitamins she needed to buy. And Sheldon said, well, you can buy those vitamins, but you're going to have awfully expensive urine. What he meant was, most of those vitamins you'll just urinate out. Now that's true of just about all vitamins except the B vitamins. The B vitamins you store, and you can poison yourself with too much B vitamin. Now oddly enough, people that are alcoholics, who drink their breakfast and lunch and dinner, they don't get enough B vitamins, and that's what causes some of the problems that they have. They will get a form of dementia called Korsakoff syndrome, and this has to do with the fact that they're not getting enough B1 thiamine. So, but we do store this stuff.
What about B12?
I'm sorry?
B12.
B12 what?
What about B12?
Well, B12 makes you happy. So if you're unhappy, one of the things we can do for you is give you a B12 shot. Makes you feel better. That works. I had my first father-in-law decided that he was going to start drinking his supper or something. Anyway, he started drinking a lot. And he started getting sores inside his mouth. And it didn't have anything to do with the alcohol. It had to do with the fact that he wasn't eating the right foods. He wasn't getting all the nutrients that he needed.
Oh, sometimes when you have too much, I know this happened to my cousin. He was taking too much of that powdered protein,
Oh, okay.
and he got a lot of sores in his mouth. And is it overdoing it? I guess?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Like,
It happens. We got to be smart about these things. I mean, it's okay to drink a protein shake, but by golly, sometimes you poison yourself, and you don't want to do that.
So when you say poison, what do you mean by?
Well, we get a toxic level in our system.
I mean, is it like taking vitamin 12 every day? Could that happen?
Vitamin B12, I think vitamin B12, no, it accumulates in your fat cells too. you know, you just need, usually you get it with your diet. So, I mean, the other question is, why do you feel like you need vitamin B12 on this? That's the other question. Taking a B supplement is not a bad idea, but if you start developing a rash or you start developing sores in your mouth, then you need to stop. You know, because you're getting too much, more than you need. Things keep itching and I want to scratch it, but I can't. If I do, I'll get yellow fingers. I have to control myself. What a horrible day this is. Okay, so homeostasis is usually maintained without our knowledge. We don't have a clue. Once upon a time, Barry Bonds, the famous home run hitting baseball player, would go to he was going to Balco, and they were checking his blood for all kinds of strange vitamin things, and they were giving him supplements to keep all of his levels up. I mean, he's a baseball player. He plays hard and he sweats a lot, and you know he lifts a lot of weights. So potentially that was what was going on. Well, they were slipping in steroids at the same time. So this individual was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But he was checking his system to make sure he had all of the A vitamin that he needed and all the Bs that he needed and whatnot. Anyway. Seeking either shelter, food, or water is to seek a primary need. This type of behavior is known as motivated behavior because that's what we have to do to survive. I was just reading an article of a diary. Smithsonian just came out, and strangely enough, they have the diary of a young lady that was in the ghettos of Poland during World War II. And of course, the Germans tried to starve them out. They tried to kill them. They tried to poison them. They couldn't get rid of all these people. So when they were looking for food or they were looking for water, it was motivated behavior. The systems used to regulate temperature, body fluids, and metabolism are negative feedback systems. It was really kind of an interesting situation because we're talking about a ghetto system here. We're talking about a ghetto, and we're talking about everybody starving to death. There's just not enough food. So the individuals that were the most successful in these situations were the little short skinny guys. It wasn't the big hulking monsters that were able to maintain themselves. It was these little bitty guys that were able to sneak through cracks in the cement and whatnot. The ones that were able to crawl through the gutters. These were the individuals that that helped people survive. The bigger you were, the less likely the more likely that you would be seen if you tried to sneak around. But it was these little bitty skinny guys that were the ones that were able to supply the people with food because they were able to sneak through the fences or sneak under the fences, and they were able to go out and find food for the people in the ghetto. The systems used to regulate temperature, body fluid, and metabolism are negative feedback systems. When an individual goes beyond a set point in the level for one of the primary needs, the brain is informed of the negative level like a warning light on a gas gauge. It tells you that you're running on empty, whatever that empty happens to be. Maybe you're thirsty, maybe you're hungry, maybe, I don't know. Thirsty, hungry, maybe you're cold, so you need to cover up. Because we are constantly burning fuel, utilizing and breathing out liquid, and entering into different environments, the process of maintaining homeostasis is a constant balancing act. Losses that we must have, that we cannot get around, are known as obligatory losses, and they obviously require constant monitoring of primary need levels. So we're constantly losing fluid, we're constantly losing energy. We're constantly burning energy just being awake. Cooling not only slows the action of molecules, but it slows the chemical reactions in cells as well. Enzyme systems in most mammals and birds are most efficient at normal temperature, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit in humans. Does anybody know what the normal temperature for a dog is? It's like 101.2. Yeah. Any higher temperature in the protein molecules do not bind properly and thus cannot function as they should. And this is one of the reasons when you have a fever that the individual doesn't feel very well. Everything's shut down while they have a fever. So if they have a fever for an extended length of time for more than 24 hours, now potentially we've got a problem because this individual is no longer metabolizing food. So they're not maintaining their cells anymore. So you can't maintain a high temperature for very long. This is one of the reasons why when somebody has a fever, we try to bring it down as fast as we possibly can. In the old days before aspirin, we didn't have a way to bring down their temperature. And a lot of people died of fever because or pneumonia, because we had no way to treat them. We couldn't bring down their temperature. We tried. We bled them, and sometimes that would bring down their temperature, but we had really no way of helping them. At very high temperatures, the amino acids in the proteins break apart and begin to fuse together at random. The protein in the brain is especially susceptible to high temperatures, and this is the reason why we try to control fevers. You can destroy brain cells. Those brain cells will never be the same. It's one of the reasons why we don't give people aspirin anymore, especially kids. Sometimes we'll give it to adults, but we don't give it to kids anymore because of a condition called Reye's syndrome, where they go into a coma for the reaction of their temperature and the aspirin, the acetylsalicylic acid. It caused a condition known as Reye's syndrome. A lot of times these kids would have seizures afterwards. Their brains would never be the same. Their intellectual capacity was destroyed because of Reye's syndrome. If you watch television over the last couple of days, they were talking about those two brothers. The two brothers, they both had developmental problems before, but they also developed Reye's syndrome when they got sick as children, and it made them even worse than they would have been otherwise. Anyway, they had Reye's syndrome. Okay. Prolonged high fever can cause brain centers that regulate heart rate to die, thus killing the patient. And of course, that's what used to happen in the old days. At very low temperatures, the cellular membranes are disrupted by the formation of ice molecules, and even when thawed, they cannot reform properly. So you can't get them too cold, and you can't get them too hot. What am I thinking? What was I thinking? Oh, measles. If you've ever had the measles, you guys probably never had the measles because you were inoculated against them. But when I was a kid, we didn't have any inoculation against the measles. So I had the measles twice. The measles are really kind of interesting. It's a high fever that you can't control. You can give somebody, and that's, in the old days, they used to give them aspirin, but of course it caused Reye's syndrome so frequently that we stopped doing that. Now, of course, we've got Tylenol, we've got ibuprofen, we've got other ways to control temperature, but once upon a time, back in the 50s and the 60s, the only thing we had was aspirin, was baby aspirin. And of course, the measles, even if you give somebody aspirin with the measles, it will not control their temperature. Strangely and painfully enough. Anyway, we need to stop right here. We'll pick this up next time. Wait a minute, let me make sure that everybody knows that I'm all dressed up today. In my tuxedo.